something I can talk about, but I'm putting less emphasis on it. It's just my own personal practice, like you saw with the Awoken Spirit sessions. I teach your sacred voice course as well, helping people unwind a lot of the patterning we have around expression and blocks
Okay.
to that.
Yeah, that's something that I'm pretty interested in as I continue to do this. Sometimes I find myself throughout life, I've had a blockage of the throat chakra.
Well, it's the place between our head and the heart.
Yeah.
And it's also like our most vulnerable chakra area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely interested in like potential coaching to kind of let that flow. And I've gone on a few retreats. I've been in like different self-development journeys, containers that have helped me with just tapping into letting that go. And so I've done some meditations. There's like a Joe Dispenza meditation where you just sit there and focus on each chakra and
Mm-hmm.
continue to relieve the contraction. And we're also rolling now if you want to.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, we can start.
okay, cool. You lead.
Yeah, so I'm very interested in your personal website. We could maybe start there and get into how you created your website and that practice and skill and gift that you offer to people. So it sounds like you have found your own way of staying in your own pure, your own nature and being aligned nowadays. It's very easy to get stimulated with and distracted with social media, drinking coffee all the time, substances. It can just be somewhat chaotic. And so I try my best to stay on track or at least be aware of when I'm not feeling in alignment. I would even be honest, I would say currently, because I've been very busy and I'm trying to keep up with the pace and like certain goals of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel myself being somewhat out of alignment. I still feel great, like I'm healthy and life is good, but at times I can feel the contrast of being a little bit out of alignment because I'm in a stage of my life where I'm growing pretty quickly and trying to keep up. And so yeah, I'm curious how or what your offering is on your website, like those one-on-ones. If you want to tap into that real quick.
Well, I'd love to share that. Thank you for asking. But I also want to bring presence to a word that you're saying that feels really alive and important to just acknowledge is alignment. And like, what does that even mean? And I'm happy to share like what it means for me.
Mm-hmm.
But even just in this moment of acknowledging that we're not always feeling aligned,
Mm-hmm.
like just to take a moment for us to each like and I like to think of it as arriving. We drive here and we do this and we're doing that. And you're even saying what's going on this weekend. I was like, there's this and this and this. And like just allowing ourselves to, the words of Ram Dass, be here now. And the practice I love for this is tapping into the heart space. I like to feel the heart as a magnet just for our own energy. And bringing the attention there and letting all of the energy that's been scattered for whatever reason just come back to self, come back to now, to welcome yourself back with joy. This is a reunion that's happening into the space of here and now. And it's also really helpful for me, and it's a tool I use with a lot of people, whether I'm leading a group or in a solo session, to tap into our beautiful, like energetic tree body. And with it, the taproot. You know, we're earthlings. We live in earth bodies, and we have available with us always this incredible source of regeneration and intelligence and life and beauty. So just allowing our energy to say hello to the earth, dropping down into that space, letting anything heavy fall and go down to the earth to be composted and renewed. And also drawing up, perhaps with an inhale, yeah, that beautiful life force that she's holding and all that support and wisdom and stability. And that feels better already. uh, And yeah, so I'd love to answer your question about what I do and what I share on a personal level, and then
Mm,
also what I do with the larger organization that I work with.
sure.
So personally, I'll share a little background, like my short bio, as I like to say, is kale cannabis consciousness.
Mm,
For years, I worked in the natural foods industry, and I've always been a big advocate of feeling good in our bodies,
mm,
and in my personal experience and studies and investigation, really learning about plants and
mm,
how great plants are for supporting our body with their micronutrients, with the vitality that they bring. So, a big part of my work in natural foods, most notably, I ran Whole Foods Healthy Eating Education program for
mm,
the company. So, really multifaceted program, but essentially focused on helping people eat more whole foods, more plant based foods, and yeah, supporting their bodies in that way.
how big was that program?
I mean, we were in all the stores in the
Oh,
company.
wow.
Yeah, so we had in varying degrees, but some had a very large presence. We also did product development as well as in-store programming, but then also employee wellness programs. Certainly a marketing digital component, lots of
Mm,
different education videos. I was the spokesperson for a while, did lots of cooking shows, and they called me the healthy eating guru. So
mhm,
that was a really fun time of being, we talked a little bit about purpose and alignment.
mm,
It was wonderful to be in expression in a professional way of something that I was personally aligned with and also the larger company was committed to.
mm,
So I learned a lot about conscious capitalism and the expression of conscious capitalism,
yeah.
and also really was able to witness firsthand the value of identifying and articulating your values and then embodying those values in tangible ways that you can point to. And so, this is what I believe in, and here's how it shows up. And not only here's how it's showing up internally, whether it's your company culture
Mm,
or in your own internal life, but then also here's how the value is showing up in relationship to all the other facets that I'm touching out.
mm,
This is how I'm expressing my value in the world. So that's actually work I do with people now, as well as with businesses, is helping and other entities, helping them articulate and identify their values to assess how well they're embodying their values and
mm.
how well they're expressing it. So that's one facet of work I do. And
Well, if you
yeah,
don't mind just tapping
yeah.
into the conscious capitalism, that's something that uh, that piques my curiosity. So, could you describe? I mean, I think you've already kind of tapped into it a little bit, but could you provide more details on like what is currently happening with uh, modern day capitalism? I think I know,
Mhm.
but for anybody that's listening, what are some of the flaws that's occurring within the present paradigm?
Yeah. Well, I will preface this by saying I'm not an economist
I'm not
and
either.
I'm not a business analyst, although I've certainly done investing and other kinds of analysis in that realm, but mostly in emerging markets like cannabis and psychedelics and health and med tech. But I think we can systematically look at what's happening outside the or in the larger container of the capitalistic basis and see that there's flaws, whether it's in our balance with ecosystems, our balance in socioeconomics, our balance in mental health and happiness. There's a
Mm,
lot of things to be criticized
yeah.
and evaluated and improved on. And for me, it's again, my lens is my lens.
Yeah.
And what I saw was when you are operating from a place of why, of a deeper purpose why, then it informs the whole body of the organization.
Mm,
And if you also are able to articulate that and embody it, you start to attract employees, investors, customers, all of the
Yeah.
elements of what makes something in, in relationship and what makes it operational, who are also aligned with those values. Hopefully,
Yeah.
perhaps, but that strengthens everyone's ability to how we're showing up, because our why is filled.
Mm.
Our needs for having our purpose alignment is more ingrained. So that's why I really believe in that work and helping people identify that. When we talk about the term conscious capitalism, there's many people who are very involved with that movement who could
Mm.
speak to the specifics of it better than I can. For me, I work with the general tenets of it around mission and purpose and vision. And then I weave that with many of the beautiful wisdoms that I've been exposed to
Mhm.
through the different kinds of work I've done with elders and indigenous communities,
Yes. Yeah.
and pair the two of them.
Mm.
And both the ideas of relationship and spirit
Mm.
and really being able to be in our place of self-awareness, and self-awareness in terms of how we interact with the world around us, which I think are really wonderful guidances and wisdoms for business operators.
Mm. Well said. Yeah. I personally work for a startup tech company here in Austin that focuses on Bitcoin native financial services. And I've always pondered on how the culture from the top down has been very healthy, very flow like. And I think that the nature of what we offer, the product and the integrity of the product and services, it almost constructs the answer to the why pretty smoothly, pretty easily. And so this startup is a Bitcoin financial services company that is trying to change the current financial system, which I'm also not an economist or an analyst, but I am pretty knowledgeable with Bitcoin and certain facets around that subject, and understanding how money is such a huge and important tool for humanity to peacefully interact and collaborate with one another. And so, for quite a long time, even before we were born, uh, our money system has been manipulated by human nature. And so Bitcoin has this ability to help with applying money to humanity that is not ruled by human nature, but by mathematics, and brings more integrity, in my view, through my lens. And so I resonate with conscious capitalism. I think that you can label it whatever, but it's really taking a deep contemplation on the repercussions of what you're involved with and how you're going to operate. And um, I mean, I dropped multiple jobs. Well, one I didn't do on purpose because it was because of COVID, and then another one I had a great path ahead of me, and I was like, this doesn't resonate with me. I don't know if the future is um, bright with this industry. And so I think it's important for everybody to understand, looking inside of yourself, your unconscious. It might be scary, but I talk about this a lot on the podcast. But looking into your own unconscious patterns and beliefs, so that when you are stepping up in service to future generations, that those unconscious patterns that might be a shadow side of you aren't coming out and damaging future generations' mental health or emotional health or the actual earth, ecosystem. I think right now, um, there's a gentleman by the name Paul Rosalie, I think his name is, and he's been on a few podcasts, and he's like this modern Tarzan that is protecting the ecosystem within the Amazon right now. I mean, there's just tons of people burning the Amazon, and so that's
Mhm.
just like one example of what we're doing to nature and to Earth in order to maintain profits and KPIs and metrics. And I always try to tap into complexity, or I've briefly tapped into complexity science, which is a combination of different studies that um, has a theory that the universe and Earth, the planet, can evolve, even though we're destroying it. We shouldn't destroy it, but it does evolve based off of the changes within the planet, which like, I barely know this subject. So it's a topic that I would like to dive into in the future. But overall, I think we should be treating this planet with integrity and not this like blunt, like this mindless way of operating. So I'm grateful that you've brought it up. Because I think it's well needed.
Yeah, I agreed, and thank you for sharing that. We don't wanna operate none of us wanna operate in a way that is destroying our futures.
Right.
And, yeah, I mean, and it's becoming, undeniable that we're not on a sustainable course. It's just not tenable, like, for ourselves, and particularly as younger generations come in and have, what is it like for them to imagine their children in the next generation?
Mhm,
And nobody wants to, with few exceptions, fewer and fewer people want to be involved in work
mhm.
that are ruining our futures, that are ruining our relationship with the planet. We want work that feels aligned with purpose, that
Right.
feels aligned with right work, that feels good to us. And for some people, yes, perhaps they feel that their purpose is earning as much money as possible at the
Mm.
cost of everything else. But
I would
I
ar
would, yeah,
I would argue that there's probably some, you know, wounds that they not like if your sole goal is to make tons of profits and be the best and have this immense amount of status, there's probably something deep within you that you haven't figured out yet.
yeah, there's
It's my
definitely a
guess.
wounding, a disconnection, or some of my teachers would say it's a young soul.
Mm. Young
Who's
soul.
operating from a sort of
Yeah.
a more childish lens of like, mine's bigger than yours, mine's the
Yeah,
best, and
yeah.
hasn't realized that we're not isolated, that we're all connected, and that we're the same.
Mm,
And the more we pull ourselves into the lie of separation, the more the challenges perpetuate.
mm,
So,
mm.
yeah, so I'd love to also just if you unless you feel
Yeah, go
okay,
ahead. Yep.
so yeah, pick up and go back to your question on more about what do I do and
Mm,
that kind of
mhm,
piece and return to my own story. So natural foods, wonderful time, whole foods, healthy eating.
mhm,
And as the company stepped away from mission driven programs, I was very curious about what was happening in the cannabis space. It
mm.
was around 2013. It was in a very emerging market.
Okay.
You would still see like edibles in California that didn't even have their ingredients listed. And coming from a consumer packaged good background, from product development, I was like, wow, it was unimaginable to me. So I saw a lot of opportunities in the industry and imagined starting a line and doing some products, but ultimately started becoming more involved with advocacy, patient advocacy here in Texas,
Mhm.
and advising and investing with companies in other states,
Okay.
with multi state operators, with international companies. And it was a really optimistic time in the industry. And it was really fun to
Mm,
be aligned with so many entrepreneurs and visionaries on what was possible for freeing the plant. I mean, it was also a huge social justice component of looking at the harms of the drug war. And so I did a lot of work in helping people amplify their stories, doing my own storytelling, whether it was to legislators or people who wanted to invest or people who were just wanting to learn more about what was this thing called medical cannabis. And so a lot of what I have found myself doing over the years is in the realm of storytelling,
mm,
whether it's around like, hey, vegetables are good for you, and here's how to make it fun, and let's talk about food. I love to talk about food.
mm,
Let's eat food. So sharing the story of food and health, sharing the story of this plant that has been very maligned and misunderstood. And so very involved in that realm. And then also simultaneously, I started working with some really wonderful spiritual teachers and learning a lot more about my own self, my
mm.
own patterns, ways that I was not in alignment, many opportunities there with the self growth. And I felt so grateful for that work and learned a lot from some Indigenous communities that I was also introduced to through that work,
Mhm.
and picked up a lot of really wonderful tools. Even that one that we shared earlier of just like
Yeah.
saying
I feel relaxed,
hello.
super
I've got,
relaxed right now.
yeah,
Feeling good.
saying hello to the body. They can be
Yeah.
so simple. I love
Mm,
things that are simple and potent.
mm,
So I had, learned a lot of tools that I had found a lot of value in. And then when COVID hit in 2020, it was a reroute and really hit pause on the work that I've been doing
mhm,
as
mhm,
and fundraiser and such. And, but realizing that I had a lot of tools which were helpful to people as people were feeling disconnected, disassociated, fearful. Um, so I started sharing those more,
Mm,
sharing them as a practitioner of doing, there's many, many words. Shamanic is one that is used a lot, like shamanic practitioner. Um, and when I say the word shamanic, I know it's become really woven with a lot of connotations.
mhm,
But for me, it means earth based and nature based spirituality. And I like to call it old time religion. We all come from shamanic traditions and heritages
mm,
where our people, the human race, was in conversation with the earth, with the sky, with the animals, with the trees, partially paying attention so we could survive, so we could understand the language of the moon, the language of the times of year, the language of the sun, and start to orient ourselves in this world around us. So a fundamental belief in uh, indigenous cultures and shamanic practices is animism.
mm,
So anima being soul. Animism is the idea that there is a soul in all things,
mm,
particularly in the natural world. And this is part of the inherent heritage and legacy and what we're all coming from as humans. It's only been in the very short, recent times that we haven't been in a world where animism is the norm. And even we'll see it in children, like, "Hello, sky. Hello, sun." Hug the
mhm,
tree,
mhm.
say hello to the flowers. It's a natural tendency for us to honor and greet and acknowledge the natural world around us. And we do it with our pets, but also, like, with the hawk, with the
Yeah.
owl. And these are, been human companions throughout all of our time here.
Mm,
So a lot of these practices is an invitation to remember the world around us, to acknowledge it, to be in relationship, to be in conversation, to be listening, and that includes our own earth bodies.
mm,
That's another place where, we can really improve the relationship that we're in. So some of the work I do with people individually is wherever people are in that path and
mhm,
that journey, weaving in part of that appreciation and that interconnection and helping people access the benefits of being awake,
mhm,
of saying hello. And with that comes a remembrance of unity consciousness. It becomes exciting and inspiring, and it reawakens senses of wonder as well as gratitude
mm,
and love and just being aware
mm.
of self and of place and our relationship.
There's a lot that I wanted to tap into, certain questions relating to the Whole Foods eating program as well as animism. So, just to continue rolling on where you just ended, uh, earth spirituality, um, animism,
Old time religion.
old time religion. Yeah, I'm personally in a self discovery of spirituality. I'm very curious about it. I think that there's a trend of people around my age, ranging from late 20s to 30s, gravitating back to religion or spirituality. The more popular one is Christianity, and I've delved into it, but I'm not sure if it's the path that I'll go down. Um, Earth spirituality, where you're practicing and having an awareness towards everything around you. Um, yeah, I wonder how people can embody that, especially Americans that are really plugged into technology and like kind of just brushing this off. Like
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I've had my fair share of moments in the recent past that has uh, provided an embodiment through certain tools to understand the power and peace that you can attain and just be present with when you're in tune with nature, in tune with yourself.
Mhm.
But some people, I have friends or colleagues that might look at this, and they're kind of plugged into the tech hemisphere, and so just how would you approach someone like that? That's
Okay.
very
So there's a lot of things you brought up, and I'm like, okay,
all right.
let's dig in.
Let's hear it.
And first off, I mean, you can be someone who is working in the realm of the shamanic lens or an earth-based spirituality, which is a less charged to say, and still love Jesus. Like Jesus is awesome. He had beautiful teachings,
Yeah.
beautiful messages. You don't have to limit yourself to trees and hawks and sunshine. You can work with ascended masters. You can work with teachers. And the more you start to tune in, you realize that the message is the same around awareness, around love, around how we walk on the earth and how we take care of each other. These are universal messages that I keep saying the word relationship. I mean, it's in the pieces of awareness. So all of these different, religious traditions we can start to pick apart, and does it say this, and get into the dogma. But when you pull back the lens, very compatible. And you can work with Jesus as well as Kuan Yin, as well as Buddha, as well as other holy figures and teachers. I consider Mr. Rogers one of my spiritual teachers. He's awesome.
He's an ascended master,
oh my gosh, totally. So it's not delving into it has to be this way in the dogma. For me, it's about broadening the lens and increasing the sense of connectivity, increasing the sense of awe and wisdom that is available to us. So that's one piece. So you can do that. And I, have worked a lot with people, whether it was with kale or cannabis or consciousness, that sort of felt like that's not for me.
Yeah.
And so I love meeting people where they are. And there's certainly, if someone's more in like a science brain, there's really great studies around water and how vibrations spoken into water, played into water will affect the molecular structure of water. So this is a physically measurable action change that's happening. So that's one way we can start to think about like praying into water, singing into water. One of my favorite practices that I will do the most consistently is I'm also a big believer in habits. Like I'm a mom of 3. I'm a working person. I live in the modern world. I'm really busy. So I'm not going to be like, sit in your quiet space for 2 hours a day and isolate yourself and think no about that. Like, no, this is real world stuff. And that's where the integration is. That's where the challenge is. So one of my favorite things is working with water. And every morning I drink a glass of water. Most people do that. It's part of my daily practice. And I take a minute. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. Sometimes it's 20 minutes if it's a luxurious morning. And if the weather is nice, I step outside. I can do this inside too. And a lot of the teachings I've been enjoyed is around the directions, the 4 cardinal directions of east, south, west, and north as good teachers for us. So I will acknowledge each of those directions, acknowledge certain aspects of them. The east is morning, it's newness, it's possibilities, it's awe. The south is often about summertime and warmth. And I think about all the support I have. I think about my body, say hello to my body. The west is the sunset, the end of the day, the harvest time. I think about my ancestors. I acknowledge my grandparents, my father, and just start thinking about the open road and the path of dream time. The north is winter and nighttime. I think about balance and stillness and bringing it all in. I acknowledge the divine masculine of the sky. I acknowledge the beautiful earth that we're on. I acknowledge the land. This is just my map of doing this, but it could even just be holding your water and being like, oh my God, I got clean water. And maybe thinking about what you want to do that day. Maybe thinking about, oh, I love my bed. It was so comfy. Or I can't wait for my coffee, or whatever the thing is that feels alive for you, even if you don't have a map like I described, which is fine. And I just sort of gather up my prayer, my thought, my feelings, my intention, whatever word, I just blow it into my water. I pour a little bit of the water onto the earth or onto a house plant, just as an acknowledgement of sharing what I have. And then I drink the water and save a little bit at the end, also pour it onto that plant. And this is a practice that just brings me into like
Mm.
gratitude. It brings me into focus. It brings me into a sense of time and space and what I receive and what I'm doing next,
Mm.
which can sound simple, but these are important things
Yeah.
to get anchored. And it's, again, something I can do for 2 extra minutes or for longer. And it's my most consistent practice, and it's beautiful.
Mm.
So something like that, where even for someone that's even that feels really woo. Again, this idea, like, you live in an earth body, like your body comes from the earth. I don't care if you want to go to space, like that's a
Mhm.
fundamental truth that everyone's going to acknowledge. And go sit on the earth and let whatever's heavy be heavy and breathe it down and see if you feel better. Or even the feeling of like energetic hygiene is another one. We're starting to talk about it like we're in energy bodies, and we can talk about feeling someone when they walk in the room with big
Mhm.
energy. Like
Mhm.
most people, no one's gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm.
Most things, when you start to lean into the talk of energy, when we start to lean in the talk of awareness, of place, this is a language, these are understandings that are ingrained in all of us.
Mm.
So I've actually never been in conversation with anyone who's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And as we talked about, you mentioned Catholicism and Christianity, like the ideas of saints and helpers, like those angels, these are similar to what I was saying about saying hello to the world around you,
Mm.
acknowledging the animal, acknowledging the sun. Well, it could be acknowledge Michael, acknowledge Gabriel, and each of those
Mm.
represent. So often these, more modern religions, I mean, you might not consider Christianity modern, but they're
Yeah.
pulling from traditions. No one's jumping in and saying, I'm going to invent something that no one's ever done before. We're weaving in the past. We're weaving in the inherent ways that humans love the world around us and interact with the world around us.
Mm.
So it becomes rather easy when we start to just acknowledge, like, you're already doing this. You're
Mhm.
already looking at the sun. You're already, oh my God, the sunset is so beautiful. And
Mm.
it's just allowing something that you're already doing to be more intentional and to be more received. Open
Mm.
yourself up to receiving that. So.
Thank you. Thank you for leading us through that journey right there. Um, and for anybody that still has doubts, if you're listening, I did a workout before this, was in the sauna. My heart rate was going, right? And
Mhm.
also I was just thinking, and recently I've been in a mental sphere of like, man, I'm just so busy and I'm like, my mind's all over the place and like, I'm not as like peaceful or at peace as I was before or like grounded and like just sitting here with you, I can feel it. I
Mm.
can feel it. Like I've already felt the anchor of presence and I feel more calm, more relaxed. So well done.
Thank you.
And the difference between waking up in the morning at random times in the morning, I mean, you don't have to be on the dot every single time, but if your routine is like wake up, phone, no intention whatsoever, I have found that to be one where your mind is all over the place. Coming, you're not grounding yourself to earth or the, to nature around you. And, social media in general and your phone can spike all these different emotions and lead you into directions that you're just, it's just scattered, right? And that can propel you into a perpetual state of maybe a little bit of anxiety and stress. And so that morning routine that you just led us through, and I personally have one as well. Lately, it's been a little scrambled, but for the most part, I've maintained a routine of like wake up and drink some water and just pause and don't look
Mhm.
at your phone for the first hour or two. And
And and if you do look at your
it's
phone,
okay.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I look at my phone frequently when I wake up because I just, "Oh, anything I need to attend to right away? Nope,
Yeah.
I'm good." So, I didn't wanna interrupt you though, but
Well,
yeah.
no,
Yeah.
that's a great point. This week, I actually today was the first time this entire week that I've gone to the gym. I usually go to the gym like 5 days a week, and I'm going to the sauna. I'm doing all these things, and like this week, I was like, let's just pause and not
Mm.
feel the attachment to having to do these things in order to be at peace and at an optimized state. Like having these maybe mental attachments towards your morning routine and like, oh my God, I went on my phone and like, well, the rest of the day is good. Like it's just being present with, everything that you just said is great, like doing those practices, but at the same time, like you don't have to be so attached to that as well. It's like, so this is something that I'm currently practicing, and this week was an example of not going to the gym, resting. You just my morning routine was not the usual, and I was like, let's just be with that.
Mhm, mhm.
But what you described, I think, especially for people that might be really in their head and maybe not in their entire body, um, these practices have helped me in the past. I've been in phases in my life where, man, my mind was all over the place and it was just spiking
Mhm,
cortisol and stress.
mhm.
And these various practices that you've described or other modalities, whatever it may be, can help you tap back into the body. And I really love your mentioning of earth spirituality. And you were saying how modern, like Christianity, you could maybe consider Christianity a modern um, religion in comparison to the indigenous shamanistic
Mm,
practices.
mm.
Um, those I'm assuming, have been around for thousands
As
and
long
thousands and
as long
thousands.
as we have.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, people we've always noticed the moon, right? Like,
Mhm,
we've always, noticed animals notice the moon,
mhm,
we've always noticed the wind and notice when the days get colder and shorter. There's a lot of cycles and seasons, and that's leaning into them, learning from them, and even as you talked about, you being in a cycle and season this week, you're like, "I'm gonna be more in stillness."
mhm.
Like that it's okay to allow ourselves to ebb and flow, to be like the moon, to be like the waters, to be like the seasons.
Mhm.
That's natural.
Yeah.
We talk about biorhythms, we talk about, we talk about interconnectivity, and yeah, we can hack and we can do this, but everyone's guessing. Like you can have people come in, I know this and this is gonna work this way. Like, what the wise man says, I don't know.
Mm,
Because there are so many variables and facets. So
mhm,
we can, the wise man, the wise woman also looks to the world around to teach and to guide. So, one of my another like favorite, water aside, prayers aside, one of my favorite things I often suggest to clients is go lie down on the ground. Go lie down, find a nice place, hopefully the weather cooperates. It's okay if you wanna put a blanket down, it doesn't have to be, like, naked skin to earth. Just lie down on the ground, and maybe it's a rock, maybe it's grass. Just let yourself be.
mhm,
Say hello to the earth beneath you, let the body receive it. I don't care if you're on your back or your belly. And just be held completely. And maybe if you want to go into a wandering, maybe also just think about, oh my God, you're connected to the earth, and there's the crust of the earth that touches everywhere. There's a fiery mantle. There's water beneath us, especially in Austin.
mm,
Just allowing the wonder of just pulling the lens back and hmm, to sort of see what the mind does, see where it goes. The earth is incredible energetic medicine for regeneration, and just like tapping into that field or just noticing that it feels good or noticing the sky, and there's little things that can just help us reset and come into presence. And then if you need to like get into your job, go produce, go move,
mhm,
you've taken a moment to like gather up your energy. And this is another place where we can look to nature. We could look to big, powerful cats, for example. They are very much in stillness.
mm,
They are very much in their earth connection, and when they are ready to gather their energy and act, that is been a
mm,
big asset to them
mhm,
to go ahead and strike, to move, to run, And so these are also ways that we can start to tune in to the medicine and the teachings and the wisdom of the world around us, and how do we embody them. And again, this is likely something that many people are already doing. Like even the most like, non-woo bro is probably got like a jaguar cap on or something, or they got a bear or a stag, like
Yeah.
something where they are honoring and communing,
Mm.
even if it's unintentional. So my invitation as we talk about this is just to start to open up the field of being more proactive in these things that we're already doing and less reactive about the scramble. And so it's about like gathering up your power, gathering up the energy. And so there's many practices around cultivating power, on assimilating wisdom, on stepping into awareness of how we walk on the earth.
Mhm.
And I'd love at some point to talk a little bit about how I've been able to tap into more of
Yes,
this
please.
through these
Yeah,
communities. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. So as I shared, I've, had some really wonderful teachers that I've worked with and been honored to work with, and there's a nonprofit that I'm working with now that was established in 2012 as a way to support some of the communities that my teachers had worked with.
Mhm,
And we've now expanded into working with other communities. So the nonprofit is the Center for Shamanic Education and Exchange.
mhm,
And again, I know shamanic is a big word. It's really just old time religion, earth based spirituality. Um, and what we do is we support programs in these communities, programs and projects that perpetuate their elder wisdom and spiritual traditions
mm,
in those communities.
mm,
So we're operating in a way that is non extractive. We're not like, well, we're gonna come in and take your wisdom and document it and share it. Like we're allowing the community to lead. They ideate the projects and they run the projects. We're not boots on the ground. We're not directing. We're in a place of receptivity,
mm,
allowing the communities to lead, but with the lens of perpetuating their spiritual traditions. So often that's to the next generation in those communities.
mhm,
And so we currently have projects. We have a beautiful project ongoing with a Shipibo Conibo
mhm,
community in Peru. And in that project, we are funding the younger generation, so 20 something, give or take, to do month long or even 2 month long dietas. So a dieta is also called sometimes a sama, and it's a period of communing with a plant. And there's many, many, many plants in these areas. There's some that get a little more attention,
mhm,
like tobacco and ayahuasca
mhm,
and some of these other like more psychoactive plants. But there's a huge amount. There's just a pharmacopoeia in of available plants and plant wisdom. So one of the ways that they are experiencing plant wisdoms is to do a very focused time of fasting and limited food, and to consume the plant and spend time in contemplation and conversation and learnings from the plant. And that shows up in dream states, that shows up in songs that they
mm,
download from the plant themselves and then hold the energy of that plant and they can sing it in healings. And it's also through just that experience of integrating the plant into their energy field, into their physical body. And
mm,
so that's a tradition that has in some places been not as available because of the modern world and jobs and motos and things that need to
mhm,
happen. So this allows us to support them in that tradition that is benefiting the next generation and gaining wisdom.
mm,
So it's one way to sort of think about that particular program is they're helping cultivate the onanyas, which is the Shipibo word for shaman
mhm,
of the future. We have another project that I'm really thrilled to share about, and it's with the Kogi in Colombia.
mhm.
And I know you've talked a little bit about Kogi before with folks in this
Yeah, with
chair.
Steven, yeah.
Yeah, and it's I'm deeply honored to be involved with this project with the Kogis, and it's focused on their samhas, their spiritual women. And the mamos, who are the male leaders, spiritual leaders, and community leaders, are often more visible. But the Sanhas hold the mysticism that is often reserved for women, particularly around the birth portal and the birth process and the elements of motherhood. And so we have a program that, again, it's not us going in, it's Kogi led, it's Mamo directed, but they went around to the different villages in the Kogi Nation and identified who are the women who are carrying this knowledge, brought them together for the first time, having a gathering of
Mhm.
the samhas, of the holy women, and talked about what they needed to also perpetuate and making sure the very precious wisdom that they're holding is passed down. And then they're also going to take some of those women and go down to southern Colombia to other indigenous women who are not Kogi, who are part of like the Putumayo and jungle region, and impart to them the knowledge that they've been holding, because they found that many of the indigenous women, particularly in that area, don't have that spiritual context of the work that they're doing in midwifery and in child rearing. So
Mm.
it's an indigenous to indigenous transmission, and it's also ensuring the perpetuation of that Kogi knowledge, both in their own community.
Mm.
So I've really been delving into like, why is this work important?
Could we tap in a little bit into
Yeah.
the Kogi?
Yeah,
So,
let's do it.
midwifery, for people that don't know what that is, that's practices and knowledge around giving birth, right?
Yes, around pregnancy, around giving birth,
Okay.
around infancy and child rearing. And
Could you, this might be a loaded ask, but tap into some of the flaws of modern day birthing, maybe in
mm,
America, it could be around the globe.
yeah, I mean, you can look at statistically, even staying out of my piece, like we have a pretty high, in the US, even compared to other countries, a very high maternal mortality rate. So it's mother
Mm.
death
Oh, wow.
of whether it's in birth or within the short period afterwards. Infant mortality is also something that's measured. There's also the just element of disempowerment that sometimes comes from the way our modern system goes around births, but I've had 3 healthy babies. Some of them were born at home. I had, wonderful assistants and in that birthing process. And I know we've made a lot of strides in the past few decades
Mm.
in the US, and
Mm.
there's so yeah, I don't have a lot of energy
Okay.
honestly
Cool.
around like trying to analyze that system, but it's really when we're getting out of the 3D Western modern experience and acknowledging that this is, I mean, have you ever been in a room where a baby was born?
My sisters were born when I was like 12.
Okay. And were you present?
I don't know if I don't think I was in the room,
Okay.
but I was like in the vicinity, I
Okay.
believe. But
So,
yeah.
so I've, other than my own personal 3 births I was very actively involved in, I was able to be at one other birth,
Hmm.
and, so I was more objective in that moment,
Hmm.
and that moment when a baby enters the room, when you're in a room and in the middle of the room, there's suddenly a new person, like, it is just like, it is a incredible
Yeah.
burst of energy.
Hmm.
It's a joyous moment, it's exciting, it's also a little bit like,
Whoa.
yeah, and there's, you gotta
Psychedelic.
kinda pay attention, make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to do, there's a
Hmm.
lot happening. Um, it's magical,
Mm. Yeah.
and there's a perspective that the Kogi are holding. The Kogi, considered the most, intact would be one word, pre-Columbian culture. They're holding a lot of, prophecy and understanding, and so this is actually, as I speak to them, it's woven in what I was sharing about why is this important? Sort of stepping out of this idea of preservation and archaeology and something that's old that should be preserved because
Hmm.
it's old. Like, no, it's important to us right now
Mm.
because of the things we've been talking about. We see humans in a crisis. And this crisis can be in whether we're looking at mental health or we're looking at ecological balance. So again, when we're looking at the future, we're kind of hanging on by a few threads, which
Yeah.
when we pull back the lens can be quite alarming. And one of those elements of this crisis that I see is that we've just become so disconnected from our home, from who and what we are, and
Hmm.
from each other in that process,
Mm.
from the land, from the waters, from so and when we look at it from an energetic perspective, which is there, which is undeniable, it's not just, is that we've been talking this whole time about the assumption that there is energy.
Mhm.
Talk about the energy of birth, the energy of our bodies. Um, there are people, there are communities that are holding on to these threads of connection and have been holding on to them for millennia, for eons, unsevered connection of
Mhm.
conversation with the elements around us, with the teachers and the souls that are the earth, that are the sky, that are the mountains, that are the waters. And they are holding on to this wisdom and this communication, which I believe is vital
Mhm.
for the continuation of humanity.
Mm.
The earth will regenerate. The earth is going to be okay. She's got millions of years to cycle up again.
Mm.
We don't necessarily have that. So I feel and I see that it's really important that these communities that are in these continual conversations around how to be in relationship with the earth, how to tend to her, how to honor her. There's a
Mm.
lot of traditions of offerings. The Cogico call it like a Spanish word, but pagimentos, like making a payment to be in a relationship, to find balance,
Mm.
to acknowledge her power and her beauty and her ways that she takes care of us. So when we're in this place of tending to those spiritual roots of humanity,
Mhm.
I'm getting like, you hear it in my voice, like it's swelling up. I
Yeah.
have a lot of energy behind it.
Yeah.
I fundamentally believe it's vastly important to our collective future. It's beyond the idea of reciprocity or rice relationship, or I learned from plant medicine, so I want to give back. It's fundamentally important to the human future that we honor and continue these unsevered conversations and traditions of our connection to the earth.
Yeah, I really agree with that perspective because there's going back to conscious capitalism and your so you were just saying how Earth can regenerate. This is a matter of restoring and just maintaining the health of humanity. Um, there's the opposite side right now, especially it's trending worldwide. There's climate change doomsday mindset, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be aware of the Earth, but there are patterns of the Earth changing in climate, like multiple ice ages,
Mm.
and this ideology of like one organization that comes to mind is the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and I'm not saying that there's only like there's like multiple different aspects of the WEF. It's like a huge
Yeah.
organization, but
I've actually been
I
to
think I
WEF.
saw that, yeah. And
Yeah.
there's certain people that are tied to it that have created this, honestly, this fearful, in my view, and based off of some of the people that I've spoken to and within society in certain segments of society, it seems like this like forcing of like of human behavior in a way that feels destructive. And like uh just to like dive into like Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, I don't know if you know who that
I
is,
do.
but there's this whole resounding message within the internet that states that he wants us to eat the bugs, he wants us to remain in pods, and essentially it's like this dehumanizing aspect of like what he is perceiving. And so, anyways, like that's one example of this like extreme fear based, the world's going to end, the planet's going to end, which I believe is actually perpetuating the the illnesses with that we're seeing within society. I think that the earth is, I mean, I haven't done a lot of research into this, but I do have this intuitive sense that the earth is regenerative, and we need to like find ways to collectively and in a unified way tune into ourselves as as maybe woo woo as that sounds like. I would argue the major like Klaus Schwab or maybe other um, powerful men or women that are uh, going in this direction of like we need to control society, like climate change, and it could they might even be like formulating these theories for their own control and their own power.
Mhm, mhm.
And so anyways, I just want to provide that example because it's actually something that bothers me. And I'm trying not to pay too much attention to
Yeah.
it, but it's something that's keeps coming up from different segments of culture. And I just don't think it's healthy for, the WEF just had a global forum
Yeah.
recently. And some of the messages that they had there it's just, like scary. Like they just want it sounds like they just want absolute control over the individual. And yeah, I mean, so I guess to kind of close the loop, like on that thought is that I absolutely resonate with and agree with what you're saying. And I hope we can carry that forward within some of maybe the leaders within the WEF or technocratic corporations, whatever, that can really, Elon Musk is one example of this. I don't agree with everything that he does or what he says, but he seems to be pro-human. Like he wants humanity. He keeps saying that,
I don't know.
anyways,
Yeah.
trying to stray away from like a dehumanizing perspective,
Yeah.
is something that I hope we can continue to propagate in society.
Yeah, there's, like fundamentally, it's like the vibration that I think you're speaking to
Mhm.
is fear.
Yeah.
Fear. And there's a lot of fear right now on the planet.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of fear and it's coming up. And in a way, fear can turn into things that are very destructive, but it also can be informative if we start to work with it
Mm.
proactively.
Mhm.
And but that's a tall tall task.
Yeah.
So, it's and where and it's easy once we start I mean, in no way am I saying put your head in the sand, but when we start to speculate and look at the possibilities and look behind the veils and realize that there's a lot of things that are not what they seem and that it can feel very activating.
Mhm.
It can feel very activating, particularly to our own personal degree of control.
Yeah.
Where people are trying to control me, or this is trying to happen, and da da da. And
Yeah.
how do I respond? And one way that I've really understood my own fear patterns, because this is really all I can work with,
Yeah.
and then I can be in a place of better self and show up in a place that is purpose aligned, that is aligned with my values, which
Mhm.
is the work I'm doing with the Center for Shamanic
Mhm.
Education. But to look at our fear patterns and also acknowledge the role that they've played in our personality selves, and the main goal of our personality, of our ego, is to keep the body alive. So ego fears are coming from an evolutionary standpoint of something that has kept your body alive.
Mm.
And so we talked a little bit about giving grace to ourselves. You're not doing this, you're not doing that. We have our judgy voices for self, for other. So I approach my personal fears the same way. And so one common like fear pattern that is a way that I address it, that is I have tendencies towards, and many of us do, is impatience,
Mm.
which is essentially the fear of not having enough time. And
Yes.
I've had times in my life, like I've noticed it in particular, like with my kids, are like, or if someone's not ready and it's time to go, have had times in my life where I have a disproportional response of
Yeah.
urgency to the situation, because it's actually not a big deal if you like actually get to school on time or not. It's not,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
feel this sense of urgency. So allowing myself to like take a step back, look at that fear that's emerging and sort of contextualize it like, thank you for the information, but like the floodwaters aren't rising, the Vikings aren't coming, like everything's okay. And returning to that place of now.
Yeah.
Everything is okay. I'm safe. We're safe. And then I can respond in a way that's appropriate and help the situation go in the direction.
Mhm.
So I'm not in any way saying that like we shouldn't take urgency out of our response to what is happening
Right.
or to our purpose work. What I'm saying is when we're operating from a place of fear,
Yes.
whether you're have a very influential person at WEF, or if you are in your own individual work of what is in front of you, it typically does not have um, effective repercussions or
Mhm. Yeah.
consequences in that action. So the more we can neutralize fear, contextualize fear, understand our own fears, give ourselves grace in it, the more energy we have available to actually put our focus and direction towards
Mm,
something that can make a positive
mm,
change, that it comes back to being value
yeah.
aligned. And that's where I too like that I've brought that back a lot too. Once you have a sense of your values, of your direction, that can really help be the compass that points you towards moving towards something. That's it's often said that this spiritual path is proactive, not reactive.
Mm,
To be in your place of sovereignty is a proactive role, and if you're in a place of fear
yes.
response, we're
Yeah.
not able to have that clarity, that sense of alignment, that sense of power that we're then gonna act to. Like, you go back to the cat that's responding out of fear is off-centered. The cat that's responding out of focus is going to be far
Mm,
more
mm.
effective.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Beautifully said.
Um,
Thank you so much. That's something that really I needed to hear because for the most part, I've been operating from a place of being proactive, but there are moments where I'm acting from a place of fear.
mhm.
And to reiterate your sentence of your ego is when it's reacting with fear, it was trying to protect your body. But what I've found is if it becomes too much of a habit, this fear, this operation of fear becomes the main operator, it can damage your body
Oh,
with
yeah.
stress hormones.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I've been able to experience that. So at like maybe if you're young, you might not be able to totally feel that, but as you get older, you can. And so I really appreciate you um, saying all of what you just said. And to go back to the center,
Mhm,
um, we were touching upon, I know the Shipibo and
mhm.
then also the Kogi. Is there anything you want to close on the Kogi tribe?
That's a project that's in process, so
Yeah.
it's something that's gonna be shared about more and more, and, where you can find us at shamaniceducation.org,
Hmm.
so very easy to find, and we only send out about, like, 1 email a month, so if you
Okay.
sign up for the newsletter, I invite you to read it. We also have, in our partnerships with these communities, we have some really beautiful Indigenous artwork from Peru. And I actually just took a trip down to Mexico. We work with the Wixarika,
Yeah.
Huichol people there, and some incredible pieces. Many of these pieces are ceremonially inspired,
Hmm.
visually beautiful. So those are other ones that we'll have there, and then I also have some bags that the Kogi Sanhas, the holy women, made
Mm.
that they just sent to us as a thank you that we weren't expecting. So those are really sacred objects. They're, I wish you could have you just smell them. They smell like wood and forest, and they're all like the threads that they're worn with. They're all hand woven, like hand
Mm.
spun, and then
Hmm.
they weave them together and they're really, beautiful items that we sell them as part of our fundraising, for those funds to go back into the communities. I also, South by Southwest is coming up for folks in Austin.
Mm.
I know this may be passed by sometimes when folks are listening to
Mm.
it, but we're gonna have a really big, beautiful, fundraiser on March 10th and March 11th. I've been an advisor for South by Southwest as helping with the different tracks and bringing in and evaluating different applications for the psychedelics track,
Hmm.
for health and med tech, for food, for culture. So I'm well beautifully networked in that space. So there'll be many of speakers coming in and wonderful people joining us for that unofficial South by event. That's a fundraiser for the center,
Mm.
and we'll have some of the art displayed and. Yeah, there's more good stuff coming,
Yeah.
but yeah, shamaniceducation.org. Myself personally is also a way to tune in to staying abreast of fun things that I do in town. I hold a lot of community prayer, like community acknowledgement, especially of where we are in time. So
Mm.
that sometimes is equinox or solstices. a lot of these traditions that I work with have, like one vibration that we haven't talked about is joy. And the joy that comes from alignment, the joy that comes from celebration, the joy that comes from awe and beauty and being in touch with the world around us and having interpersonal exchange. Like
Yeah.
these are all wonderful healing medicines of joy. So in some of those community gatherings that I do in town, there's a lot of joy and good prayer and in remembrance of speaking proactively what's in our heart, what our dreams are,
Mm,
and working with the times of solstices, of equinoxes, sometimes full moons, and doing a lot of singing too is another piece of it.
mm,
Songs that are accessible for people to join in, or if you feel like that's not in your wheelhouse, to also just receive the joy of song and vibration. And that's a whole nother conversation that we could
yeah.
have is sound and whether it's the sound of voice or of music, but the different indigenous beliefs and of the way melody carries medicine into our bodies and into
Mm,
our hearts, which is another piece that we can extend to both the measurable physical world of the way vibration affects physical bodies,
mm,
whether it's water or our own bodies. Um, so actually, receiving certain melodies, certain tones is healing on a tangible level. So I
mm.
know I just said a lot right there.
Yeah, there's a lot. Well, to go back to stay on maybe the different tribes that you're working with at the center, there was one apprenticeship program, the Guatemalan,
Mhm.
and there's a prophecy. It's the Union of the Condor,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, the Quetzal
Yeah,
and the
Quetzal.
Quetzal and the eagle.
And
I've
and sometimes it shows up as the eagle and the condor too. So
Yeah,
that's another prevalent framing of it.
sure. Do you have knowledge of that prophecy?
So I have definitely studied it and read about it, and it's a very so even the word prophecy can sometimes feel like is it we start to have the beautiful accordion of time.
Yeah,
Has it happened? Will it happen? Is it a tale? Is it a possibility? Is it a myth? Is it a legend? Is it
right.
a prediction? So that's one word that I just want to presence. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
get to be in the space of spirit.
Mhm.
Spirit speaks through metaphor. So this is a story of metaphor. And as I see it, and I'm going to tell it from the perspective of the eagle and the condor,
Sure.
because this is the way I've heard
Yeah.
it the most. Um, the eagle is a beautiful, strong bird. And if you see eagles fly, they are very direct.
Mm.
They know where they're going. They fly very, very high. And it is said that the eagle is very close to spirit, receives messages, and is in its place of knowing, its directness. And if you see an eagle hunt, phew, they are very focused. They are very
Mm.
clear. They are very strong. And in the US, we have the eagle as a symbol of our freedom, of our
Right.
power. And so it is imbibed with these qualities. And often it is likened to the head, to the intellect, and to the ways of the US, of the more modern peoples, the often European or Western
Mhm.
peoples that are here in the
Mhm.
US. And the condor is also very powerful and beautiful, and she is a bird of service. Similar to vultures, she is tending to the earth and cleaning up the things that people would prefer to have gone,
Mhm.
the carcasses. And so she is very much a bird of service. And often in the Andean condors, they even will not have feathers on a certain part of their chest, revealing their skin. And it's said that the condor wears its heart on the outside.
Mm.
Condors are incredible. And again, scientific fact that we can work with here, they can fly for over 100 miles without flapping their wings once. It is a true story.
Whoa.
I
That's
know.
crazy.
So imagine the level of relationship they have with the unseen, with air,
Yeah.
and the
Wow.
amount of faith and trust and flow that they have in their ability just to move and soar and amble. So there's this very sweet, like sweetness and gentleness and relationship with both the ethereal and the high and of the earth itself. Um, so often the condor is said to be akin to the heart. and
Mm.
to the indigenous people. They are very much touched of wisdom, but is also with the earth, and it is holding the ways. Condors are also incredibly old birds. They've been around longer than the eagle. They've been
Mhm.
around a very long time in the evolutionary scope. So the story is that at one point, the condor and the eagle were united and were able to roam the skies together.
Mm.
There was harmony. And then there was a fissure, something that separated them.
Mm.
And there was conflict and disharmony. And the head was not aligned with the heart. And there is this sort of prophecy piece, or the piece of possibility that's woven into the story, is that after this 500 years or so of this coming together and having a split, a
Mm.
strife, a problem, that there is an opportunity for them to return to harmony, to integrate, and to soar in the skies together, united in the head and the heart, united in the flow and the focus. And will that happen? Is still to be determined, or has it already happened?
And is
Um,
that like a representation of uniting the head and the heart of humanity as well?
mhm. And also potentially you could read it as of the modern, the Western and the original, the native people
Mm.
would be another way to imagine. And we still see tremendous conflict throughout the Americas with Indigenous people fighting for their physical presence, fighting for their cultural preservation. This is a lot of the work we're doing at the center, is to help support them with that.
Is that with like local governments?
It's often around land.
Mm.
If we look at the carbon sequestration in the world, you spoke to the Amazon earlier
Mhm.
when I first sat down. Much of that territory is being defended by indigenous people because it is land. And this is, again, like a deep conversation we could have on the importance of land, the
Mhm.
importance of place, that relationship. But even just from, again, a measurable context, many indigenous people are putting their bodies on the front lines of protecting the land from logging, from mining, from agriculture, from people who want to get in there and take the resources, take
Yeah.
it and extract it. And that level, that idea of extraction is antithetical to what we've been talking about this whole time, this idea of relationship, of interconnectivity, of not being separate. And these are some of the fundamental foundational core beliefs
Mhm.
of indigenous people, of, where we all came from. So
Mm.
it's back to the eagle and the condor, that fissure, that something that happened that separated the head and the heart, that caused great strife and even violence. Like, do we have an opportunity to step back in? And this is again why the work at the center for me is so deeply important,
Mm.
because we're returning to that unsevered conversation, that unsevered wisdom that people are holding. And often, many people have interactions with some of these communities through the realm of psychedelics. We've taken the shiny thing that's like a peak experience, and we're
Mhm.
like, wow, that's really powerful. And it can be really powerful. I acknowledge it is powerful. I acknowledge it when it's tremendous healing potential, but we're taking it out of relationship. And the people that have been working with these plants, that have a long-term relationship
Yeah.
with them, also hold and embody and know all of the wisdom that plant has shared with them and shared with their community. And so there's a whole body of knowledge that is often neglected because we're coming at it through our lens of status, our lens of greed. And well, they don't know anything. They're still walking barefoot on dirt roads, like, so we aren't
Oh,
able
man.
to be in a place of uh, reverence, of acknowledgement, and of receptivity. So in that, we're denying ourselves the larger gold, the
Mhm.
larger treasure. And even that, I've myself have learned to not look at that. Like, I just refer to it as gold, treasure, not look at it from an extractive lens,
Mhm.
not look at what can I get from it? How can I improve myself? So being in a place of how can I, given the context of who I am and my place in the world, how can I honor it through the resources that I do have available? How can I go in as a good listener rather than I know what you should do or you what need this or that kind of how do I go in a place of the heart of receptivity, allowing my mind to be a tool, but not the dominant piece,
Yeah.
to be in receptivity of building relationship, of leaning in, of learning and understanding
Mm,
what is wanted,
mm.
and then to show up in a way where I can support what is wanted.
Yeah, I see big companies, technological companies, governments in this perpetual competitive game,
Mhm.
whether it's to provide to go back to like Elon Musk and he's one example of a pretty innovative CEO within the technology industry, and he's perpetuated, or his belief is, I have to do this to save humanity because there's other human beings that might use this technology for bad, for to maybe destroy humanity. And he talks about, Larry Page, I think he's like ex CEO of Google, who was like, he called Elon a speciesist or whatever, like, just let the uh, intelligence of AI just take over essentially, or maybe leaned in that direction. And so I bring that up because there seems to be this nonstop competition, whether it's those technology companies, but also like China and Russia, and I pray that that lightens a little bit because it
Mhm.
just seems so aggressive right now.
Mhm.
And I think that's unraveling within my mind because I want the center to succeed. I want the center to continue to preserve land, to maintain the wisdom of these shamanic and indigenous uh, communities. But man, how hard these companies are going and how hard the government's going, it's something I have in my awareness, and I hope that they lighten the load a little bit with what they're trying to do. But it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's. So I pray for your
Thank
center
you.
and for you because I'm not as involved with what you're doing, but I resonate with it a lot, and I am also this, uh, an example of an American who finds his way towards the shiny things and like did ayahuasca. And I spoke with Stephen Young about some of the flaws of Westerners, Americans, chasing that kind of materialistic like um, status carrot of first it was the car and the house, but now it's like let me take pictures of myself doing ayahuasca ceremonies and status. And um, he he like described how you know um, yeah, like these tribes, these communities have this wisdom, and a lot of, including myself, these Westerners. I do have like a community that I'm in right now. It's been very helpful to integrate for longer period of time. Afterwards, it's not in person though. And Steven was talking about how one of the flaws is like these shamans that conducted these ayahuasca plant medicine ceremonies, they were a part of a community and the community participated in that. And then they were around each other
Yeah.
all the time. So
Yeah.
then they could integrate and be intertwined on a day to day basis. What Steven said as an example was you got someone from LA flying into Peru, doing it for 3 days and going back. And
Mhm.
like psychologically, they are not held.
Mhm. Mhm.
And um, yeah, I think it's super important for going back to conscious capitalism. How can we level the playing I don't know if that sounds right, but like level the playing field or balancing or bringing and intertwining parts of these the wisdom and the practices of these communities into America. Like I find that we need it pretty desperately. It might be the word, or I think a big portion of society in America is maybe feeling lost or um, not as healthy as they'd like to be. But yeah, I thought that was one that came to mind, and so I hope, yeah, sending you prayers
Thank
for
you. I'm a big believer in prayers, honestly. I
Yeah.
think it's important to speak them out, and I really encourage people to step into their prayer. Speak the big dreams of your heart. Speak the peace that is alive for you, that is the biggest prayer you can imagine, and keep stepping in further. And the beautiful thing is, you're allowed to have as many prayers as you want. You can have them for yourself, you can have them for your family, you can have them for the land, you can have them for the humanity, you can have them, for whatever you wish.
Mhm.
And I encourage you to say your prayers out loud, tell them the people you love, gather up and have a dinner party or a circle where you're like, let's all take time to talk to spirit or talk to each other or talk to self, whatever resonates with you,
Mm.
whatever the word is. We've been talking about the head and the heart. This is what's between them. This is where we hold a lot of our magic and power as humans, is in our ability to speak, in our ability to vocalize.
Mm.
And often this is where the prayer, the manifestation first becomes vibration, and everything's vibration. This is
Yeah.
all just
Yeah, yeah.
vibration.
Yep.
Like, I know it seems very solid, but it's just vibration. So vibration is powerful. So and now allowing ourselves to bring what is here and to process it through here and integrate it into the place of the voice and speak it out is magic and is part
Mm.
of our power.
Mm.
And so I welcome your prayers for the center. I welcome them. I believe in them. And yeah, if I just I appreciate the time and the opportunity to come and share what's in
Yeah.
my heart and what I'm bringing in. And if anyone resonates with that, yeah, we really welcome, because we're working directly with Indigenous communities. We can fund projects for $5,000. We can fund projects
Mm.
for more as
Okay.
well. But so even smaller donations really help us. Checking out our site if you want to bring into your realm some of these beautiful artworks. There's more coming. I have more coming from Peru. As I said, I just got some beautiful pieces from Mexico. We'll be holding an art show in Austin,
Mm.
and the beautiful Colombian bags, and more coming. Where our goal as we expand our resources is to continue our projects in the Americas, but also extend into Asia and Africa and expand with other Indigenous communities. And that's other pieces that we are happy to weave into. And
Mhm.
again, just to be clear, we solely focus on Indigenous communities. Sometimes people come in and they're like, "There's this great teacher in Brazil, and
Yeah.
he's building a retreat center. He's from France," and
Right.
I'm like, "That's not really what we're doing." Like, I honor him.
Yeah, yeah.
Good luck, brother. But we are focused on the first peoples
Yeah.
who are in that unsevered communication with spirit, with the land, and helping. Well, so and even in the word helping, I need to reframe sometimes, like showing up in support of their vision.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm. Yeah. Um, you also are a part of Shamanism Without
yeah.
Borders.
So that's a piece, that's an extension of the Society for Shamanic Practice. So it is a group of international group of shamanic practitioners.
Mhm.
So that's people who are walking in the path of earth and nature based spirituality.
Mhm.
And often there are certain techniques that are used commonly in that realm. Song is one, often sacred smoke.
Mm.
Smoke is incredible. It can travel in the worlds of energy and matter and the spaces in between and carry our prayers. I could go on about that, but
Y
but another common tool is the tool of the drum journey, and that's a cross-cultural ancient tool of entering an altered state. And as I understand it, when we hear any kind of monotonous rhythm, our alpha and our beta waves start to decrease and our theta are amplified. So it's similar to a state you might have in daydreaming or in that space between wake and sleep.
Mhm.
It's a little liminal. And I think of drum journeys as like a lucid daydream where you are still present, but you're in a little bit of an imagination. And the imagination is sometimes, when I teach drum journeying, I tell people like the only way to do it wrong is to start being like, "Is this just my imagination?" We're like, "Well, of course it's your imagination. That's where you like create everything.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
work with your imagination. It's
yeah.
great. Foster it. This is a really good tool for expanding your imagination too." So in a drum journey, I'm going to abbreviate it in terms of like how to do it, but I have a resource for that on my webpage that's free that I'm happy to share. I can send you a link. Um, you go in often with a question, with something you're wanting more information on.
Mhm.
So in Shamanism Without Borders, we assemble a group, and this can be done virtually. We usually do them virtually, of people to focus our journey on a certain issue. And we focus on issues that are creating suffering on in the planet.
Mhm.
So it can be something like a natural disaster. It could be something like an armed conflict. It could be an ongoing piece like, pollution. So something that's disruptive and creating suffering in our world.
Mhm.
And then we do a drum journey. We sort of set up a process of getting into neutrality, getting out of our heads. Because if we go looking for answers, but we're like, I know what needs to happen here, we're not in a place of receptivity. So we go through a process to get neutral and do the drum journey looking for more information about how to bring out balance and harmony in regards to that situation. So, yeah, it's really beautiful. And then we often will share, it's not required, like what's come in.
Mm.
And so it's an energetic tending to a situation. And I've found it personally, and like for myself, and also in witnessing in community, in that process, it's also very individually healing. If we look at some of these things that are very activating to us, that are upsetting because they are disturbing, because they're creating suffering, because they seem overwhelming, like
Mhm.
we don't know how that would ever be fixed. To get out of the headspace, to work with that lucid daydreaming
Yeah.
space, and to bring ourselves into a higher perspective and neutrality with it, then it's like, okay, I feel a deeper sense of peace. It can still be activating, it can still be upsetting, but we've allowed ourselves to step out of the story and to witness it from what I call the eyes of the divine sometimes, where
Mm.
we're like, okay, you know, one way or the other, it's all going to be okay. Even if humanity doesn't make it, it's still okay.
Mhm.
Like your essence, your soul will continue.
Mm.
We already know, I already know my body's gonna die one day. I don't know how, I don't know when, but the more I attach to this physical world, to the status, to the things, to the way I think it should be, the more I'm setting myself up for suffering. So the further you can rise above, work with the perspective of the eagle, work with the heart of the condor,
Mm.
the better we can show up in this world in our higher self, in that essence piece, and step into the purpose. Many people, one way to frame our human experience is Earth is a school for souls. And we all have a different part of our soul work to do, both like the purpose work, homework, and also the lessons that we need to learn about remembering who and what we are, about remembering ourselves as a piece of the greater whole in connection. So that's for me how I see it.
Mm.
So it helps sometimes to step out of the muck, the
Yeah.
story, the weeds, to get that higher perspective. And then we go back into it and do the dishes and do the work and drink the water
Yeah.
and give ourselves grace because we're human.
Human. Yeah, my mentor says the same thing. Uh, Earth is a school for our, what did you say? That Earth is a school for our souls?
We're souls, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I mean also, but in that too, like if we are part of, if you along with me believe that we are essence, we are spirit, we're having this human experience. Like how cool to have a human experience. Like I get to be embodied. I get
Yeah.
to like drink water, I get to splash around, I get to love, I get to cry and just like I get to experience beauty, all this range of sensations
Mm.
and emotions. Like, that's really special.
Mhm.
You look at the scope of the universe, it is really special to be right here, right now, in this human experience. And so that's a fun thing to think about as well.
Yeah. Um, there was a lot of different topics that you mentioned that we could have tapped more into, and we've got a little bit more time. Is there anything that you would like to maybe provide more details about that
Mm.
we haven't covered?
Um,
relating to all the topics?
there's so many good ones. So I yeah, my main focus right now is, as I'm in my alignment with my purpose work and seeing all the dots connecting, is really around the Center for Shamanic
Mm,
Education and helping to nourish the root of humanity and helping to, seeing ways that I can bring more energy into those projects that help us remember, help us connect to the land, that support Indigenous communities in taking their own direction, their own sovereignty, their own leadership, and feeding the things that are foundational to their life, to their traditions, to their
mhm,
ways of life, to their spiritual traditions. So that's what's most alive for me, and that's what I have most joy in talking about.
mm.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. How could the average individual help support the
Uh,
center?
we love money, like so many other people. And so, but as my granddad used to say about cash, it's the right color and it always fits. But uh, donations are welcome,
Mhm,
but we also I'd love to just people to engage, to tune in, to sign up for the newsletter, follow us on Instagram. We have more content coming. I've
mhm,
just been with communities in both Peru and Mexico, and also more with the Kogi. So we're sharing more on social media, but we're
mm.
scrappy. We're a volunteer board.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have a part-time admin. The majority of our donations, we give the minimum to our overhead. Everything else is going to those Indigenous communities for those projects that we'll
Mm,
share more about.
yeah.
So come, tune in, engage with our stories, and there's more coming. Also check out the shop, buy a piece of beautiful art. They're ceremonial art, they're blessed pieces. I love having them in my own home. It helps me too in that place of remembrance, in that place of gratitude and awe, to bring those prayers into my world, to
Mm,
help me connect to my deeper prayer. And, yeah, also, as we were saying, yeah, come include us in the prayers, step into yourself proactively,
mhm.
and lean into your own remembrance of saying hello to the world around you, saying hello to each other, saying hello to yourself with grace. Yeah, that's my other piece.
Cool. Well, I think that's a great way to end it. I will note everything in the show notes. I'll tag all of the center's information and yours. But you've had so many beautiful messages, um, aside from the center and from, yeah, just the shamanism without borders. If you have any, like, any message on your heart that you'd like to deliver to
Mm.
humanity right now, I mean, you kind of already have delivered a
I've been
lot of
preaching.
messages.
Well, I'll mention my own personal work as well. So I
Sure.
do, I have a practice and I do spiritual mentorship. I also work with organizations to do some of the work we've been talking about,
Mm,
get clear for the values of that organization and use the discovery process of those values to inform the internal organization. And then as well as the engagement with everyone else you're interacting with it. And so I think of it as an identification of essence, and then embodiment of that essence, and then expression. So that's another piece of thread that we've been talking about is alignment. So we do it in our own selves. So I do that work with individuals, but I also love doing it with founders, with
mm,
CEOs, and with leadership of companies to delve into, because articulating it again, back to that power of the voice.
yeah.
Even if you're, especially if you're fundraising, if you're looking for partners, if you're able to clearly articulate what is in your heart, what is your why, what is your drive, and bring it in, that vibration will land somewhere where it resonates with someone who's holding that same vibration in their heart, and
Mhm.
it attracts that alignment with our community building, with our
Yes.
network that's being created. So that's work I personally do that I love to be a resource from. My website is theawokenchild.com. You can also find me at thegoldenline.co for some of that more business focused work. But yeah, lots of ways that I show up and
Yeah.
share. I also do water blessings here in Austin. We do land blessings with some folks that I work with. And
Mm.
so
I've seen
lots,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you'll find me singing around town, blessing things up and help spreading joy.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you're doing. A lot of the work that you're doing is selfless and generous and important. And I appreciate you for reaching out and wanting to come on and share your voice. And yeah, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
It's
it
fun.
was a pleasure. Woo!
Super fun.